Hi, welcome back to the channel. My name's Claire and I'm a senior lecturer in physiotherapy, and I've put together this playlist that's really aimed at students who are doing a literature review systematically for their dissertation. So this video is around really how to get started. So let's get going with it. Just to start with a quick reminder, so a literature review done systematically, the goal of that really is you're collecting and you're interpreting data that relates to a really specific focused question. And so that's part of what we're developing with this video. And it's secondary research because you're using primary research that other people have already done to answer a different research question. So these are the steps in doing a literature review systematically, and I've highlighted the first two because that's what we're working on. I appreciate when we see a long list, it can be really easy to feel overwhelmed, but just pause, breathe. My goal is to take you through each of these steps methodically. You'll still have to do all the thinking and all of the application for it, but my goal is to try and provide a bit of that scaffolded support to help you through the process. Yeah. So don't be overwhelmed. We're going to do it one step at a time. So right now, all you need to know is we're focusing on number 1 and number 2. So checking for existing reviews on the topic and trying to work on formulating that research question. My suggestion is you start with the end in mind. So read a full literature review done systematically first, and then watch my video on the overall structure of writing a review. And the reason I say that is because it's much, much easier to know where you're going and what's expected of you if you can see the final product. I appreciate this may be a bit annoying because it's a big task I'm giving you to do with reading a big piece of work, but actually when you know where you're going, it will be much, much easier for you to figure out how you're going to get there. The first decision you're really going to have to make is, do you want to do a quantitative or a qualitative review? And I've added an example in the description of one quant and one qual. So if you're someone who likes numbers and you do really well with that, then there will be lots of numbers for you to look at with a quantitative review. With the quant reviews, you're often trying to work out if a specific physio intervention works, or you're looking at the frequency of a particular condition. Qualitative reviews tend to involve a lot more words and text because that's what the data looks like with qualitative. And it's really about trying to understand the perspective of people living with a particular condition or who've experienced a particular physiotherapy intervention. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to assume that you know the difference between quantitative and qualitative. If you're not sure, please head over to my playlist on Introduction to Research, where you can just have a quick recap on the difference between the two. Generally, I find my students know that they're like, yeah, no, I definitely want to do a quantitative review, or no, I'm much, much more interested in the people side of it and I want to do a qualitative review. Be open to both. If you're not sure, that's completely fine. But it's helpful to kind of gauge a little bit at this early stage. Do you want to go down a quantitative review route, or do you want to go down a qualitative review route? The next step is figuring out what you're interested in. And so my suggestion for that is do a mind map, because you are going to have to do a lot of reading over the coming months on this particular topic. So please make sure you are interested in it. If it's something that you're like, oh, I guess I'll just do this because I don't really know what else to do, just don't do that. You'll get so bored of it. You'll get sick of it. You just won't be able to do the reading. So pick something that is of relevance to you, because you are going to become a semi-expert in this area because of the depth of reading you're going to be doing. So this is an example of a mind map. So I've just done this really roughly. So if you think about, you've got neuro, cardio, resp, MSK, kind of got orthopedics linking to that. There are reviews you can do around specific physio skills. So maybe it's to do with communication or health coaching or behavior change. There's also all that tech side to what's happening with physio. So, virtual reality, augmented reality, tele-rehab for COVID or tele-rehabilitation more generally. That's way more common now since the COVID era. So do a mind map for the things that you are interested in and try and make that as extensive as possible, because it might be that you think, oh, I definitely want to do this. Oh, wait, but there's already a review that's been done on that. So if you've got your mind map, you can then just come back and look for another idea rather than feeling really deflated that it's already been done. Next thing you want to do is find a viable question. Okay, so what do I mean by viable? So this isn't as simple as picking a topic and then writing a research question. it will involve a lot of systematic searching and looking on library databases before you probably even arrive at your first session with your lecturer. Now, I do want to add these expectations vary from university to university. So this is my expectations for my students. And I think that's the thing I love about YouTube is that I can come on here and share my perspective, but it is very much my perspective. So if you're at a different university to the one that I work at, then you will need to just be checking in with your tutors to see what they recommend as being a viable question. But these are the 3 criteria I tend to recommend for my students. So you need to find a topic that hasn't been carried out recently. And by recently, I tend to mean probably in the last 5 to 7 years. So if you're interested in a particular topic, but actually the review was done 10 years ago, and you can find that there have been more studies published since that review was done, then you could do an updated review. That wouldn't be a problem. But if the topic you're really interested in was done in the last few years, then really you're probably back to the drawing board with finding a topic. The second thing that makes it a viable question is there needs to be enough papers on that topic which are similar enough that could be grouped together to be included in your review. And my general recommendation is if you're doing a quantitative review, you're probably looking to find about 8 to 10 papers. And if you're doing a qualitative review, you're probably looking for a minimum of 6 papers. Now, the reason there's a difference between what I recommend with the quantitative and qualitative is with qualitative analysis, it is so extensive that it will just become too big if you've got many more than 6 papers, really. So that's why qualitative, I tend to go for that smaller number. Quantitative, you really want more in terms of the numbers to be able to do anything useful and meaningful with it. So that's why I give those really as a guide. But as I say, talk to your tutor because it will vary depending on what their expectations are. And then the third point, as I've already touched on, is make sure it's a topic that you're going to be interested enough in reading about for the next few months. So when you are starting to do that searching, Google Scholar is actually a really good place to start. You won't necessarily write up in your final review that you use Google Scholar to find articles, but in this early stage of searching, Google Scholar can be your friend. And remember, what we're trying to do in these early stages is you're checking for existing reviews on your topic, and then you're trying to find a question that is viable and will work for what you're interested in. So that's what you can do with Google Scholar. So my recommendation is go into Google Scholar and you literally type in your topic here that you're interested in, and then you add the word review after it, because that will then bring up anything that's on your topic and already has a review on it. So it just means you can shut down areas quite quickly if there are lots and lots of reviews on it already. But if you do that and you find that there has been a review, don't despair and don't necessarily throw it out straight away. Instead, think critically about whether you can get a new angle on that review. And often a new angle can come by looking at it with a different population. So actually, could you look at that particular topic from the perspective of children or adolescents or older people? So don't just give up on it straight away, but it's a really helpful starting place for searching. So this is just an example from a screenshot. So say you're really interested in virtual reality and physiotherapy, you would literally type in your topic and then you put the word review afterwards. Well, when I did that, this was what came up. And actually that first one's quite interesting because virtual reality applied to physiotherapy, a review of current knowledge. So if this was me doing the searching, I would then go and have a look at that review, because probably at the end of the review, I'll be making recommendations about what else needs to be looked at. And then you might be able to use that to help you find an angle on doing your review. So then type that into Google Scholar again with the word review. The next one I think is around virtual reality and orthopedic rehabilitation. Okay, so that's been done, but actually has virtual reality been done in other populations? So use this stage to think really critically. Don't just throw things out straight away, but use it to help you as part of your searching and planning your ideas. Remember, you are trying to find a gap where there are no recent reviews and enough on the topic. So if you're happy that you've done your rough search on Google Scholar, you can't find a review anywhere, then at that stage you're ready to move on to your university library database to do some more specific searching. And so when you move to this stage of searching, what you're trying to do is break down that topic into key concepts or categories. And again, you're just going to be doing initial rough searches. Yeah, okay. I think that's all I was going to say on that. So let's move on. So the way you break it down will depend on if you're doing a quantitative or a qualitative review, and there are ways that you can structure that. So if you're doing a quantitative review, we tend to use the structure PICO, which stands for Population, Intervention, Comparison and Control. If you're doing a qualitative review, you would tend to use the acronym PO, which is Population, Exposure and Outcome. So I'm going to show you some examples of each. So if you were doing a quantitative review, and for example, you were interested in people who had COPD and you want to look at telerehabilitation, is that better than usual care? And you're particularly interested in breathlessness as an outcome or a symptom for people with COPD. So then your rough research question at this stage would be something around what's the effectiveness of telerehab on reducing breathlessness for people living with COPD. At this stage, you don't necessarily have to have that kind of beautiful, fully formed question because you are still doing rough searching. But I've given it as an example here just so you can see what a research question will look like. And then you're going to go onto University Library Database. Now, most of those are probably run through what's called EBSCO, which brings together a number of databases which can be really helpful. And so all you're going to do is you're going to take the key terms from that PICO or PO and put it into your search database. So you are interested in people with COPD. You're also interested in telerehabilitation. Now, in this screenshot, you will see when you type in telerehabilitation, it comes up with lots of other suggested search terms, which can be a helpful starting place in this messy stage of the searching. So feel free to pick all those search terms which you think are going to be relevant to you. I've picked them there, and then you'd also add breathlessness. You're not necessarily going to be adding in the comparator at this stage with your PICO because often you want to start broad with your searches and then you'll narrow that down as you come to full text screening. So that's an example of how you can do that. I would also recommend just doing a final check by adding an extra row and putting in the word review. I know you'll have done this on Google Scholar, but it's worth doing on EBSCO as well, because if it comes up with a review, it's much better that you know that now so you can tweak your idea earlier rather than being halfway into your module and all of a sudden you're like, oh wait, there's a review and I totally missed it. So do those quick checks now because you'll feel a lot better. You'll have more peace of mind. And then if we look at a qualitative example, so population exposure outcome is the acronym. So say we're looking at physiotherapists and their views and experiences on helping patients self-manage. So the research question would be, what are the views and experiences of physios in supporting patients in self-management? And so that when you do your search, you're putting all the words that relate to the population you're interested in, which is physios, all the words related to the exposure, which is self-management, and then all the words related to the outcome in your search strategy. And that's how you're going to practice doing your searching on your university library databases. Just a couple of reminders here. Make sure you select all the relevant databases. And our university, it will initially only come up with one database. So to overcome that, you have to click on the Choose Databases tab at the top of the search. That will bring up another window. And then I would suggest, I'd recommend maybe including 4 or 5 other relevant databases. Your university librarian is really helpful with figuring out which ones to use. I would tend to say Academic Search Ultimate, APA Psych Info, CINAHL is great, Medline, and Sports Discus. They'd probably be kind of the core ones for physio to be looking out for. Now, I will say this is a highly iterative process. By that, I mean it involves repetition, lots of back and forth until you reach a version that's going to be viable for you. So this might involve running a number of systematic searches until you find something that is going to work and going backwards and forwards a little bit. You may need to broaden it out. You may need to narrow it. So get comfortable with this stage being really messy and not perfect. Remember that this is not your final search. Your final search you will probably do supported with your university lecturer. This is about you in those early stages, checking that there are enough papers and no recent review for your question to be viable. So you have to start with some messy searching for that to be possible. I've added this here. Isn't it cheating to be finding my papers before I finalise my research question? No, I don't think it is. This is all part of that iterative process. And you have to start with that idea generation phase. And then you're going to get a little bit more specific by looking at and testing to see whether that topic's going to be viable. And then you're kind of evaluating it to see whether it works. So, no, I think it's really important that you know you've got some papers on the topic and it's a viable question before you get too far into it. So it's completely fine. And I put this in again. Are you sure it's not cheating? Students have said to me, but Claire, surely I'm cheating because I'm finding my papers before I'll get my question. Isn't it like putting the cart before the horse? No, absolutely not. This is all part of the process. Don't waste your time developing a beautifully focused, beautifully written question, only to find out weeks later that a systematic review was already published on it a couple of years ago, and there's not enough papers to do that. So, really important part of the process. So, just to recap, start with a rough search on the topic or topics you're interested in on Google Scholar. Make sure that there hasn't been a systematic review or literature review on it already. When you're in your university database, you do that just by adding that extra line with the word review, just to cross check it and make sure that you're okay. Make sure there are enough papers on it. So 8 for quantitative, 6 for qualitative. And then when you're at that stage, that's when you can begin to turn it into a more focused question with support from your university tutor. So over to you. Give it a go with the searching. If you're getting value from this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and if you've got any other thoughts for other videos that might be useful for you, then please feel free to add it to the comments. But good luck.